Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Bank of the West is offering the 1% for the Planet checking account. It gives back to the planet at no cost to you, and there's no monthly service charge with any deposit per statement. Only from Bank of the West. Learn more at bankofthewest.com/1%. Additional conditions apply. Member FDIC.
The Bachelorette and Friends. From first love to happy ever after.
What's that?
From dating to dick pics.
Oh my.
Oh no! The Bachelorette and Friends. Oh, I love a good dick.
This podcast contains sexual references, coarse language, and adult themes from the beginning and throughout. It is not recommended for listeners under the age of 15.
Hello and welcome to the Bachelorette and Friends. I'm your host, Carla Anita Mattiazzo. You'll recognise today's guest by his voice. He's the dude that warns you about the content at the start of each episode. An award-winning theatre and cabaret artist, he's a writer and a producer, professional coach and mentor, and digital strategist. He's a husband and a father of two gorgeous boys. Recently, he's entered the world of podcasting with his own show, The Alchemy of Success, with Vince Fusco.
Wow, that's the biggest entrance I've ever received.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like I should be applauding you, like happy to be here, walking into your arena, the Bachelorette and Friends. Look at this.
After me stumbling over strategist 100 times, ladies and gents and everybody.
Don't be so hard on yourself. It was only three times.
Right, mate. It's okay.
No, look at this. This is fantastic. Congratulations to you and the podcast.
Well, thanks. I'm really keen to hear more about your podcast as well. And we will get to that, FYI. Let's tell everybody first how we met. We know each other from when we were little children, kids.
Little bambinis.
Mm.
It'd be at least coming up on 18, have to be 15 to 18 years ago.
Something like that.
But I'll never forget the first time. I reckon it was like a children's chorus or something. Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Oh, there was Wizard of Oz, I reckon.
Yes. At the Odeon?
Yes,
Odeon
yes. Yes.
Okay. But it's the location eludes me, but the image of little teenage sort of Carla with the curly wog fro hairdo, all singing, all dancing, all Italian Carla. That's where we met. And it was, it resonated for me because I was the little Italian boy doing musical theatre, and you only find one or two of us there. So it was really lovely to there. And then it was years later that you auditioned for me and my colleagues at the time for Spring Awakening, which I produced. And you auditioned for that. And then we did Gypsy together. You're in Gypsy. Yeah. It's so funny. I was just watching some footage from that the other day.
Oh, fuck off, really?
Yeah, so good. But so we've known each other for a very long time. And then obviously we've been great friends forever.
Yeah, long time. And then you come on board with all my...
Your confessional cabaret.
Yeah. All my crazy stuff, yeah.
No, wonderful stuff. I've been working with you now for the last, do you believe it's already been close to 5 years since That's Life? That's crazy, right? Look at that.
Jesus.
But it's, if you wind the clock back, so I came on board with your production of That's Life and directed that.
Yeah, but that was in
you.
2016, man. We're already at 5 years.
That's what I'm saying. We're here. Welcome. 2021, baby. And then the last 2 years, we've been working on the Bachelorette. There's always a catch. Your cabaret about falling in love, being in love, wanting love, finding love, losing love, and everything in between. And that's something that we've worked on more recently in the last couple of years.
Yes.
And like we said, just wonderful friends and good humans in our life. Your family, really.
Yeah. I was actually just going to say that you and Joya and the boys definitely, I think in particular over the last probably 2 or 3 years have definitely cemented as family, really.
You're a doll.
Your generosity, you and Joya's generosity, and you'll find out who Joya is when we go through the stories. Yeah, you guys have really, without getting into deep and dark too soon, you guys have really been there, so supportive, so encouraging, and just absolutely beautiful gems in this world that I, absolutely adore.
Thank you, Carla. That's very kind. That's very, very kind. And you know that we feel the same way. We won't get all mushy and gushy at the top of the show, but it's easy to be a good human for other good humans, and you've got, you know what I mean? Like why would you not be caring and loving for people who deserve it? And we love you. So why wouldn't we want you to succeed? And you're doing it. So let's rock this podcast.
Thanks, Bella. Okay. Now, let's start at your first crush, because I'm really interested to hear this. I did recorded an episode yesterday with one of the boys from the Magnets, and Fantastic. He told me, I had to really try hard to be professional with him because I'm very attracted to that man. Like, oh my God, he's beautiful. Like, don't even, when I saw him at the Fringe last year, him singing, okay. I need to cool down.
Got a glass of water? Got a glass of water?
I've got my water. Just this man. Anywho, he was saying that his first crush was Judy Garland.
Oh wow! What a fantastic choice. Absolutely. And I
was like, that's beautiful.
Judy Garland. That's a really good one. No, she's not my first crush. She was probably one of my first musical crushes, in the sense of just the first musical I watched was Shall We Dance with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. And that was sort of my introduction to musical film and stuff. And then it went from there. But Judy Garland came in probably when I was about 4 or 5, like Wizard of Oz. Mm-hmm. So I don't remember feeling that way about her per se, but great choice. I remember, and Joya only just found this out over holidays. I was absolutely in love with Mary-Kate Ashley Olsen as Michelle Tanner in Full House. As a boy, little Michelle Tanner. When I was 5 and she was 5 and she was, oh, you got it, dude. I just thought she was the cutest. Ooh. That's the first sort of crush I remember feeling, or an affiliation towards the opposite sex, or she's cute. And then we had lovebirds. We bought lovebirds. And again, Joy just found these facts out, as everybody's now finding out. We had lovebirds called Vinny and Michelle when I was 5. That's how sad this story gets. Mary-Kate, Ashley Olsen. And then from there, it went from 5 years old to more your Marsha Brady. I think I had a real thing for Kelly from Saved by the Bell, Tiffany Amber Thies and Shannon Doherty in Beverly Hills. Mm-hmm. My tastes between the 90s as I grew up, my crushes before I had even, I guess, had a relationship or anything.
Yeah.
They were all very much based on, I think, what I was idolizing at the time is, Marsha Brady was just gorgeous, long blonde hair, big blue eyes. So that's, and then it became Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher, watching Star Wars. Oh my God. Crushes were always movies and TV at that point. My first physical, someone I could reach out and touch was kindergarten. And it was, she was almost, I probably should have pulled out some photos for you. I didn't think that far ahead. But now that I think about it, this girl from kindergarten looked exactly like Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, blonde hair and everything. And that would have probably been the first female friendship that I had, where we had a play date after school, come over and play, or after kindergarten. But that was only at the age of 4. And then in primary school, I'm just thinking back to year 3, and I can think of the blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl who I think at the time was just everyone was wow, she's so pretty. Aww. But you know what I mean? I think that sort of, those types of crushes definitely continued through school.
Did you do anything about the year 3 one?
Yeah, I did all sorts of dramatic romantic stuff. Like, I'm a stupid romantic.
Well, come on, let's hear it. I want to hear.
You want to hear all those things? Oh,
I want to hear that shit. Yeah.
You're so funny. Like, I remember recording like a mixtape off of like, it would have been Ugly Phil's Hot 30 back then, I reckon. Like, I had a 2-tape cassette deck and like the radio, but like really wanting to like sing my heart song of love and adoration for this girl. And I remember she had a boyfriend at the time. This is like primary school. Like, primary school is year 3, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, this is child ideologies of love based on movies and TV, obviously, because I just said how brainwashed I was by these TV starlets. But like, I remember making a mixtape for her, and like, I can't think of the song, but it was something like, I don't know what he does to make you cry, but if I was your guy. It's really tragic, but it was something like she had an argument, very public argument in the playground that day.
Oh.
Because he wasn't holding hands or something childish. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I went home and made a mixtape for her. And I remember giving it to her. I don't remember what ever happened after that, but I know that I had Take That, I Want You Back on there.
Oh, sweet.
It definitely had the Spice Girls, probably Viva Forever.
Oh, hello.
I reckon would have been around that time or something like that.
Yeah, look, mixtapes are good, man. I got a lot of mixtapes and mixed CDs from dudes growing up. They get you real good.
They're good,
mate. They get you really good. There's still songs that will happen to come on to Spotify,
and they still bring you back. Hey,
you'll get me. They'll be like,
throw you right back into that moment, don't they? Okay, so like, and you're right. They're good. I think that's probably the only mixtape I ever made for a girl and thought I was a DJ.
Mm-hmm.
What are people doing now? Like, if it's such a good idea, do we send playlists to each other?
Yes. So
is that a thing?
Yeah. Okay. So a guy that I met at Plant 4 last year who was living in Adelaide for like 3 months from America, right? He was just out random, he's vegan. So knowing me, I talk to everybody, right? You know I fucking talk to everybody. So I was sitting at Olivia's stall, the one that makes the ice cream and the waffles, the beautiful stuff. Live a Little, so good.
Live a Little gelati. So that birthday cake this year.
Yes.
That was our birthday cake this year. It's delicious. Shout out to Liv. Wow.
Just so good. So I was just sitting there like I usually do. This is before COVID. So rules are different now. I can't do what I used to do with Olivia. But I was talking to Olivia and this bloke comes along and I heard his accent. We just started talking, blah, blah, blah. And he still sends me playlists. He still sends me, thinking of you. These songs popped into my mind when I was thinking of you. Here's a playlist.
I like that. It's like a very modern, I don't know, there's something nice about handing over a tangible, like I think, I don't know, like, did they do it with mixed CDs? Once CDs came in, like, did people still do a mixtape?
Yeah, I got heaps.
You got CDs, you're saying? I don't think I ever got CDs. I don't think I ever made CDs.
Oh,
I like the idea of a playlist. Yeah. I made a YouTube playlist once for a girl that I was having a relationship with overseas at one point.
Yes.
And we made a playlist on YouTube of like videos and or song, like video clips that we thought would represent part of like how we were feeling at the time.
Yeah, cool.
Just absurd, like beautiful. You know, that, and the modern equivalent, I suppose, of that would be like, I guess, like if you're soundtracking your life, it's those, you know, those touch lamps or those things that like partners can buy now around the world where like, if I'm thinking of you, I touch it and it glows at your end. So you know that I'm there and it's like a connectivity thing. It's a really like lovely thing that's now come out. And there's like thought boxes that you can buy where they're connected and you can like send a one-to-one message to your other half if you're having a long distance, just to like let them know you're thinking or how you're feeling at the time. And I guess that's the equivalent. Like, let me send you a playlist of how I'm feeling. I guess we do that. We send each other music so often.
Yeah.
Like when I hear a song that I'm like, oh my God, this is definitely one for Carla, or like this would work for a show or a piece you're working on. I guess.
And I send you shit too. Yeah.
You're right. Okay, so I guess it is still happening. You answer the question. It's still happening. People are making mixtapes. That's great. Send us your mixtapes.
So good.
I like that too. Maybe I'll make Joy a mixtape for her birthday this year. Don't tell her.
Do it. No, she won't. You'll do it before this airs. So you're fine.
Perfect. I got time.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of The Catchalorette and Friends. Make sure you follow the podcast at The Catchalorette Pod on Instagram. And if you think your love journey is worth sharing with me on the podcast, send me an email, thecatchalorettepod@gmail.com, or slide into my Instagram DMs. Oh, and don't forget to give the podcast a review and tell all your motherfucking people to listen to the show. Now let's get back to this episode.
Kindergarten play affiliation, Year 3 crushes on again the blonde haired, blue eyed.
What was it about funny. Blonde hair, blue eyed? What is that?
Maybe because I grew up in a house
race situation, or what
that's
is
that?
that?
No, I think it's because maybe it's because I grew up in a house full of Italian women. I don't know.
Okay, yeah. You want a different aesthetic?
I don't know. Maybe that. I don't know. I don't know where it comes from, other than, like I said, television. I was at home in my personal life, my upbringing, like you, an Italian family, a big Italian family, which is has a lot of cultural customs within that, and we're very loud and we're very I don't know what the word is, passionate. That's a good one. Yeah, passionate to say the least, Carla.
We're fucking delicious is what we are. That's what it is. These stereotypes.
It was just such a dark skinned, dark haired environment. Maybe that's why I looked at the television and I just thought that these blonde-haired girls are something I'd never seen. And yet, here we are. And your tastes change. That's what we'll talk about as well, I'm sure, through these journeys, is how your tastes change. Because, blondes are not my taste. Do you know what I mean? At all. And yet they were such my jam.
Okay. So I like to talk about training wheel relationships when people get into teenage love, right? So what were your teenage relationships? First question in this part of the podcast. And the second question that marries nicely with that question is, what were the lessons that you learnt about yourself through those training wheel relationships? Yeah.
High school is the worst for everybody, isn't it? You don't even realize it sometimes. You don't even realize that it is the worst for not only the people next to you or yourself until you stop and you look and you go, oh my God, high school was awful, or I was awful in high school. Do you know what I mean? That's something that I know I've done. You look back and you go, oh my God, I was a little shit in high school. Like I said,
why were you a little shit?
just smart
everybody that knew you at school gushes over you,
which is so lovely. But I think that's probably through the lens of performing arts. But I guess on a personal level, I know that I was a cheeky boy in the sense of, you know what I mean? I could just answer back with a question, or, I said some things to people, teachers, students, probably that are not nice. Now, by today's standards, it would not fly. It would not fly in my own standards or my household. Do you know what I mean? But
that's called evolving, Vincenzo.
100%. That's growth. That's growth, people. You're looking at it. No, so I guess with high school, you don't realize it, but then you also don't realize how important it is in those relationships. And you're right, the training wheels, shit. My first kiss was in high school. Mm-hmm. I was in year 8. It was a Thursday afternoon.
I love it. Yeah, paint the picture.
It was literally just the most awkward bye. And I don't even know if we connected. And then I just walked to the bus stop and was in a bit of a daze. Couldn't really think what was going on. And what a big moment for a teenage boy or a teenage girl. And yet,
why didn't you go into law? Why was it so? Oh,
Terry, you're crazy. The first time you're ever going to kiss a girl, I'm just going to stick those lips on and hold it.
I fucking Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, so I should give you more context to growing up in my household. Maybe that would offer more
Sure.
understanding.
Yeah.
My mother always said to me, so I've got 3 sisters, as you know.
Yeah.
3 sisters, all older than me, and a brother.
Oh,
one
beautiful
brother.
women. Yes.
Thank you. So I grew up in a very strong female household, right? But my mum always said to me, if you ever hurt a girl or break her heart, I'll break your legs, right? And this is a woman, Carla, who I'm telling you, she means it. Like, she doesn't mean
I know. Oh, I know. Yeah.
Scary, right? Scary. So that's something that has always, I guess, resonated in my mind. And then growing up as a performer as well, like I've always, I was doing dance. I'm dancing with girls, doing ballroom dancing and tap dancing and ballet and stuff growing up as a kid from the ages of like 4 all the way through to 20 something. And so I guess for me, I was always very, very boundary oriented. I never wanted to make anybody feel uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? Like that's just my nature is just a simple nature. Do you know what I mean? And so I guess when it comes to like kissing someone, I don't know, like the super respectful conservative side I'm terrified, number one, like, and I'd never done it. And yeah, I don't know, going for more. That was my first kiss, and it was just like over in a blink, and it was enough. It was perfect. It was enough for then and there, because I think it was like running for the bus. She's got to go. I think there was probably people watching, because you know how like when you start going out at lunchtime when you're 12 or 13 years old and everyone's gathered around and it's such a big ceremony, and then it's just like, oh my God, it's just outrageous how wildfire, and that's it's high school, but that's what it's for. Do you know what I mean? These experiences are all for everybody in one way or another. Callan had some really great anecdotes about his time and his high school relationships. I really enjoyed listening to that one there, as did Taylor even. Like again, like your podcast, to listen back to all of them and listen through each week, and it's just wonderful hearing all these stories. And you're so right, but these are the stories that everybody tells. We all have these relationships, and
I love them because they're
wonderful. They're so good, but goes back to what I'm saying earlier about you don't even realize how much they're shaping you. You don't realize the impact they're actually having on you until you're at another point, 10 years down the road, and you can look back and go, oh God, that relationship really fucked me up, or that one really did good things for me. That one really was the one where I learned to soar, or you know what I mean? And high school, you teach it, but high school, you've got 1,000 other things going on inside of you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you're having an internal war with yourself, as well as trying to be somebody for everybody else, as well as trying to...
not fully formed yet.
No way. And that's why it's such a great time to have a bit of an ease up on some of those things, where maybe you just got to let teens make these mistakes.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like I'm not saying party like a crazy person, but what I'm saying is, there are things that is part of the experience of growing up and how you are shaped. From first kisses like that all the way through to like my high school relationships thereafter, like, and like they were intense. I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I was very much a yes man.
Ooh. That's interesting, because I see you as having clear boundaries. I don't see you as a yes man.
Now? Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's it. They're the training moves. The training moves that I had at the time, but I didn't have boundaries. And again, I think I was eager to please. Yes, ma'am. Like that's what I believed love was to be. I believed that it was like, for me to be a good partner, a good boyfriend, just make it like do whatever she wants.
Can I ask 2 questions about that? Was that the example that was set? And the second one, do you think that had to do with self-worth or valuing yourself enough to set boundaries?
There's so much that I have learned about myself as an adult and self-worth. And I think that, like, I've always known my worth. Let me answer these in reverse for you. I'll answer the second question first.
Sure.
And then the first one last. I have learned that I've always known my worth.
Mm-hmm.
I've never known the value of it properly. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does.
Now that I've been cashed in a few times,
Yep.
I look back at the account book and the receipts on it and I go, geez, like people are getting some really good deals here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Emotionally, spiritually, physically, energetically, whatever. But when it comes to my worth, for context, again, on my upbringing, I've been performing since I was 3 or 4. I've been in auditions since I was 4, like even as like a baby model, and like, you know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous, some of the things, but I guess like that's something that I've maintained my whole life, not begrudgingly, not unknowingly, but it's part of that means that I've constantly been, like yourself and so many other artists and performers and creatives, anybody who's put themselves up for a job interview, a first date, a blind date, anything that you're putting yourself up for, you're putting yourself up for rejection and vulnerability. So as a performer and as a child who just thinks they're going on an audition, but then to have 4 adults every week or every day say, not right, you know, like it becomes very critical. And that doesn't really form until later. I think I'm a bit lucky in the sense that I've had a career through the arts my entire life, as well as having a academic career, a professional career, a life outside of all of that. But I guess what I'm trying to just pull the point back to is the criticisms and the values on looking right, sounding right, being right, performing right, details right, for me are something that has really become what is the cornerstone of like my attention to detail now, like as an adult. Like I'm a very fastidious, tidy, articulated adult, and it comes from, I believe, like that's self-worth. But now I know what I'm worth as well. Like but I also don't give a fuck about you can value whatever you want. I know I'm worth this. Does that make sense? So if you want something, like I've got no other qualm about anything else now, but I think with self-worth back then, definitely you want to be liked, you want to be loved, you want to be you want to be part of the in crew as a teenager. That, and to answer your first question, and this is why it links together so beautifully when you ask, was that the example set? Again, I come from a big Italian family. I think I was formally introduced to my dad at 18 years old because he was gone in the morning before we got up, because he would be, you know what I mean? Like he's up at 6, he's out of the house, he's at work, he comes home at dinner, showers. I'd see him at the dinner table for the first time every night. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like dad's home. And so dad, like mum was always the homekeeper, again, like 3 sisters, myself, my brother. That's a full house. Like that's 5 children. That's hectic.
That's back then. Lot of energy.
That's a lot of different things flying around. And so like, I think because I always saw mum doing a lot of that heavy lifting at home, you know what I mean? Like she did everything for all of us kids. She drove me around to dancing lessons, singing lessons, acting lessons, whatever lessons I had to go to, plus all my other siblings. Like we got where we had to be. Things just happened somehow through this woman. Do you know what I mean? Not to say dad didn't do his fair share, but it wasn't that, you know, we never really saw, I guess I never personally really saw that type of relationship where it's like, it was more like hearing mum, classic Italian household, being like, your father hasn't done this yet, he needs to do this. Don't ever make it hard for your wife. Like if, you know, I tell you, if your wife has to go through these struggles, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like full on. And I guess that's why, even more so, like growing up, I was always just like, I'm an easygoing person. You know what I mean? Like I want to make things easy for other people. I don't want people to have a bad experience with me or anything. And so I'm very much was a yes man, because I was told, don't be the reason that somebody else is complaining, or don't be the reason that somebody else is hurting, or do you know what I mean? And
that's a big burden.
And that's, well, I guess that's the thing. Like, and when you're then like on top of that being told like you need to work harder to be better, to achieve more in every sense of your life, when you're a child or a teenager or a performer, an academic, whatever the fuck, like all of that, that's a lot to sort of take. So these things will shape you. And that's why I was a yes man. So no, not because of the example, and not, and yes, I do know it wasn't about self-worth. It was back then, but now we know the worth. And again, that's what a lot of people go through when you grow up. That's called growing up.
But some people never do it, Vincenzo.
There it is, Carla. That's right. Some people
don't.
Some people can't bridge the gap. But that's okay. Like, and that's the thing. That is okay.
Is it?
Because if you're willing to understand that why is it not? You don't have to bring everybody across that gap. Sometimes people just don't make the gap. And you know what? That's it. You know, I forget this is not a visual medium, but we're actually on a podcast, but you and I can see each other. So I'm here waving my hands, throwing my hands in the air and holding blank looks at Carla as if to say, well, that's it. These people, they're in the gap. That's okay. People can go in the gap. I think that's something as well that I've always struggled with. Like, I always want to be the hero. I'm a protector. I want to protect people and save people at the cost of your own detriment in relationships. Do you know what I mean? Like relationships, romantic, platonic, whatever relationship.
Yeah. I found that's a pattern that I've really had to break. And I think that's why I've stayed single so long, because there's a little bit of fear within me that I'll fall into that pattern again. But I think because I'm so aware of it, I'm able to pick the early signs now that won't happen again, because I just won't buy into somebody who needs me to fix and mold and drag them along the gap. Like, I fucking can't do it.
Yeah. And I think that's totally valid and fair for any individual to say, because it's not your responsibility to keep that person happy or to make them happy. You're not responsible for their happiness, because they are. You're supposed to bring both of those happy, bring both the happies together. Do you know what I mean? And that's how you succeed. And it comes with not only, I guess, not just your own happiness, but it's your emotional baggage. If you have emotional baggage on yourself, you're going to bring that into a relationship. If you're happy, and this is where I think choice becomes a much bigger discussion, and we're digressing from love and relationships and whatnot. But I guess just quickly, things you're not changing, you're accepting. It's okay to accept the bad things too. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that's something to be said about, like, what is it that you're accepting? You can accept you've got baggage on yourself and bring that to a relationship. You just then have to find a way to manage it. Whereas if you've got an internal war on yourself and you don't love yourself, how can you possibly give that to somebody and or receive it? And I think that's the thing. Sometimes when it comes to receiving love, in any shape or form, whatever that looks like, friendships, parents, the guy who makes your coffee in the morning, it comes in so many different forms that people sometimes don't know how to accept it, because they don't know what it is. They don't know what is coming at them because they've not been given that example.
Sure, yeah? That makes sense. And
and you're choosing that. Like, you're choosing to not accept it. Whereas if you can choose to accept that and know that there will still be, I don't know, I just don't think you should have to do that. I think that's where compromise and choice
is different. That's right. I think in relationships, in particular with romantic relationships, as far as I understand them, because look, at the moment, I've been single so long, my understanding of relationships are theoretical and what I hope to implement in the future, because I'm not in the shit. Do you know what I'm saying?
That's so funny. Like, I have told you so many times, and I know it, and I stand by it. And I know there is someone listening to this podcast. I'm certain that your person is listening to the podcast, and no doubt they are there going, man, this chick. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know that you say it's theoretical, and quite right, it could be at this point, but you shouldn't, like, don't let that then, how long is it theoretical before you then just bury it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? When do you douse that flame out and go, you know what, we're done. I'm just going to be single. As opposed to, do you continue to have an idea of what a relationship is and to seek it out? Do you know what I mean? Like,
but what's the pros and cons in both of that, though? Because I've definitely ebbed and flowed through I'm just going to let it go, be my joyful self, stay in my joy, which is what I'm doing. Like, now I've been working on that for the last 6 months.
And you should, glowing.
Oh, thanks, mate. So I've been focusing on that and shifting, limiting talk and mindsets and whatnot. But sometimes there is the frustration that comes in. And the frustration sounds like this, Vincenzo. It sounds like this. I know my worth. I know what I have to work on. I know what I have to give. Where the fuck is he? That's what frustration sounds like for me in regards to relationships.
Can I, and this is wonderful.
Yep.
Say everything you just said again. Do that exactly for me again.
Yes. All right. So when I am frustrated, it looks like this. It sounds like this. I know my strengths. I know my value. I know my weaknesses and what I need to work on. And I know what I have to offer in a relationship. So where the fuck is he?
Okay. The reason I wanted you to repeat it is I want you to repeat it again for a third time. Okay. Delete the last line.
Okay.
Delete the last line.
All right. I know my worth. I know my value. I know my weaknesses. I know what I have to work on. And I know what I have to give in a relationship.
That's all you need. Stop asking where he is. Because ultimately, you as an individual, the fact that you finish that frustration and that it's a mantra on yourself almost. I know my values. I know my worth. I know my weaknesses and what I have to work on. I know what I have to give in a relationship. So where the fuck is he? You've got 3 powerful statements and then a question dependent on him.
Fuck you, Vincenzo. Fuck you. Yeah, you're so right. Oh, Vince.
Sorry, like I'm telling you right now as your friend and and just a human being. Like that's probably the most like feminist thing I can tell you today. But honestly, like the fact that you have an empowering mantra like that, 3 powerful statements about yourself, and then where the fuck is he? Who gives a fuck? Let him turn up when he turns up.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, if you know what you have to give, let somebody else understand what you have to give.
Yeah. But that's only in moments of frustration.
100%. 100%. But it's in those moments of frustration, Carla, where you're at your darkest or your mind plays those games on all of us. When you're in a moment of frustration, that's when you start to come up with those things like, where is he? He will save me. He will make the final piece feel better. He will make my life feel complete. He won't.
No,
he will.
No, I know that.
He should enhance it. He should just make it better. They should just make it better.
Correct.
They can complete you as a person. Do you know what I mean? In the sense of like, wow, you complete me. I'll never let go, Jack sense, but it's, do you know what I mean? But I just think that you should repeat that more to yourself, as should a lot of people, and delete that last line about where are they? Because again, you're just putting a lot of dependency on them, whereas you do have so much to offer, and the right person will identify that. I know that's such a cop-out from someone who's married with children and being all like, hey, just hang in there, single one. But that's, you know what I'm saying. And I think that's a really poignant point that we've covered today, which is so far off of your podcast. We're crossing into my podcast now. Welcome to my podcast, in which we look at things like this, and we'll discuss these types of things on success of love, personal growth, personal development, professional, chronic pain, living with. I've got some wonderful guests that we'll talk about later.
Yes, right.
That's a whole different thing, but it's very much in the vein of this type of communication and just understanding those points. But Carla, fuck, like, oh my God. Anyone who is listening to this, if you haven't already, put your single friends up. We need to do like a lottery almost, like a month of blind dates with the Bachelorette. And we should get your listeners to help us. You know what I mean? I know that probably contradicts everything I just said about waiting for him. And now I'm like, set her up.
But you know what? I actually like that idea. I feel like that needs to be some promo somewhere for something.
All right, we'll work on something. We'll workshop something. We'll pin that and we'll come back to that. Right. We'll put something together. Fantastic. Okay.
If you subscribe on patreon.com/thecatchlerette you get early access to episodes, not to mention keeping the pod alive for as little as $1 a month. Subscribe now. Patreon.com/thecatchlerette pod. Okay, let's get back to your love story, Vincenzo.
So back to high school. Wow. Didn't we just cover some fucking ground? Jesus. Okay. That was wonderful. That's wonderful.
Thank you for sharing and
But
being
yeah, so high school, like first kiss, first relationships, and then I had a relationship in high school that was like 6 months, was like the longest at the time.
Right.
And that one there taught me I was very much a yes man as well. But this one was the first, I think, like teenage serious relationship,
right.
Like real sort of feelings, I suppose. Looking back, when you reflect and you go, oh, that one there was pretty good. Like that one there was really like a first serious relationship. And then the scandal of it all is that I subsequently dated her best friend.
Oh.
Who, well, no, hang on, put those eyebrows down, lower those eyebrows, both of them. And then subsequently dated her best friend, who turned out to be my absolute high school sweetheart and we dated for like 7.5 years.
That's
Do you know
right.
what I mean? So that was turned into the longest relationship at the time. And you learn a lot through that. You learn, between high school, between 16 when we started dating and 21 when we broke up, 22 when we broke up, like it's a lot of ground you cover, individually, academically, professionally. You just grow so dramatically. And I think that was the ultimate downfall, is that we were just two different timelines. And she told me that quite a bit, which was good, like very realistic in like at the end, not all the time, but at the end it was, I can see it, like I could understand it. And I really, at the time I didn't want to see it. I hated seeing it. Do you know what I mean? Like that was my first heartbreak.
So my brother has had a long relationship like that from 15 to 23 with his ex. And I always wondered how that was sustained. Like, obviously, you and my brother are very different people, but just time-wise, especially during such a formative time in your life, like there's so many things happening biologically.
I think it's different for so many people, though, because I know people that have been in relationships since high school and are married with children now. Like in my friendship circle, I've got friends and family whose partners they've met while they were in high school and they've been married for 50 odd years. Like, I think it's such a special thing when you find that. Not to discount everybody else's specialness, but I think like that, you're quite right. Like that's probably the most difficult type of relationship to traverse through decades.
Yeah.
Formative decades, even your 20s. I feel like your 20s are still like so formative.
Yes.
And as we get to adult relationships, even then, like I think that's something when I think back on, thinking about this podcast about relationships, I'm like, gee, I'm sort of early to mid 30s now. And I'm already thinking back to like, God, at 24, I thought this, and I thought that was it. My goodness, like how incredibly wrong we all are. But I think that's because we were still evolving. Like we were saying earlier, how like individually you're learning, you're changing. People who can manage that, they're meant to be. Like I just think that I can't argue with that. That's they're meant to be together. They were meant to spend that much time together, whereas other people are not. I thought we were, but we weren't. We were actually only meant to spend that much time together finitely. And through that we learned this. And then the other side of it, we learned this as adults. We learned that we don't like the way we communicate with each other. We learned that we didn't appreciate this part and this part. Those things seemed okay at the time because that was our ideas of relationships. Like it's so funny now. Like I said, like reflection is such a funny thing. But you have to be able to identify what it is you're looking at and take away the important.
But the thing is, Vince, not everybody does it. Not everybody wants to and I'm speaking from experiencing a lot of men that I've been set up with that can't look below the surface because it's just too scary and too much. And that's automatic turn off for me. So because that's not even being aware of who you innately are if you cannot look under the surface. Like, no thanks.
But I think that's the individual's choice, though. Like that's where you as a person need to be happy within yourself. Like if you can't acknowledge your demons, and then you're going to go into a relationship and not even whatever those things are, if it's too scary or dark or whatever it is you're saying beneath the surface for these people, if they're not willing to do that, then they're not actually giving themselves 100%. They're not giving you 100%.
But then it's usually, from my experience, the individuals that have expressed their not want or need to look below the surface are generally the ones in relationships that say, and I'm paraphrasing, that say things like, the same things keep happening and I don't know why, but I know that I'm not the fault. Like, okay.
But if you're the common denominator, I don't understand that. But again, that really comes back to individual. Like if you can't acknowledge it, and some people don't acknowledge that, and that's okay. I say it's okay in a very, what's the word? Politically. Yeah. But like, you know me, I don't suffer fools lightly in any sense of the word. If it's shit, it's shit. If you're wrong, you're wrong. I just think that you have to, everybody knows themselves internally. Everybody knows what they're feeling. If you know that you have not dealt with that, you know that. But you also then have to know that at some point, unless you find a way to deal with that and close it, at some point it's going to cause an issue for you. Do you know what I mean? But if you can find a way to navigate it through different, systems you put in place or different techniques or however you deal with it mentally or speak with someone, I don't know what it is exactly we're talking about. We're being very vague and but I can see where you're going with it. And
I worry, especially when people are so disconnected with their inner selves, and then they get severe illnesses to sometimes the point of nearly dying and getting the opportunity for another start and still not being connecting those fucking two things.
But that's a whole different podcast we need to have. A whole different podcast. But totally hear what you're saying. And that's where habits and patterns in people's behavior come in. Like you said, the same thing keeps happening, but I'm not the problem. And it's like, what is the same thing that keeps happening? And what is the cause? What is the effect? And then if you can't see that, it's all data. Everything's data.
It is. From teenage training wheel relationships that we've just spoken about, Vincenzo, and you've spoken about your longest young love relationship, and that she spoke about you guys being on different timelines. Now,
different life paths, I suppose.
Different life paths. So how did you resolve that within yourself once it was over? Was that something that was difficult for you to be at peace with?
Definitely. I answered that too quickly, didn't I? Only because at the time, and that's the thing, when you put it all in context, it all checks out. When you go, that makes total sense. At the time, of course, I found it really difficult. I just had my heart broken. When you're the heartbreak-y and you don't see it coming, that's always really difficult. Do you know what I mean? The heartbreakers always had a little bit more mental preparation. They've
had a run up a little bit of a run up.
A little bit of a stretch even a stretch before the run. And so at the time, I found it really difficult because I was like, no, how could it be? This is what it is. But again, I was 16 and all of my teenage dreams of the perfect boyfriend-girlfriend situation and we're high school sweethearts. It's all very, again, it's romanticized. So of course that idea was being shattered in front of me. And that is, I think, when I really turned, I went back to uni, I left uni, I started a business, I threw myself into work, and I just ran myself ragged.
Yeah.
Ragged. I picked up like extra work emceeing at clubs and bars, and was working the door at a bar like at least twice a week, and just it became very much that escapism for me at that point. Like I had moved out of home for the first time, besides like being on tour. So like I guess having left home at around like 16 to start traveling for performing regularly and touring, and then having that irregularity of being home for a year at a time. It was like I'm home for 2 weeks, I'm home for 6 months, and I'm home for 3 months, and it sort of got sporadic after that. And then it became really like moving out, living by myself for the first time. I'm back home. There's no rules anymore. Like that was, I think, one of the biggest shifts as a young adult, which a lot of people go through as well. That sort of, not a quarter life crisis. It's still too young, but it's still just another step, another chapter. You know, people take off and fly overseas and do the European thing. People backpack around Australia in a van for 18 months. People do whatever the fuck they want. And I just threw myself into work and partying and living. And that was actually the scariest and the most exciting thing I ever did, because it changed my whole landscape in every way.
I feel like that was touched on in Tears, Beers, and what was it? Beautiful Girls?
Beautiful Girls.
Yeah. Tears, Beers, and Beautiful Girls. Yeah.
The very loose inspiration for the Bachelorette. It was always the dream. So yeah, in 2000, and we started writing it in like 2012. Max Garcia Underwood, another wonderful local artist here, and dear friend of ours.
He's so sexy.
There you go. Shout out. Absolutely. I'll come back to Max later again if you like. But I remember the very first time I met Max, he was auditioning for me on another show. He would have been like, I think maybe 19 at the time, 18, 19, but I'd never heard a voice or seen anybody play guitar like him. And he just was amazing, wonderful. And then since then it was on. But 2012, 13, we wrote a show called Tears, Beers and Beautiful Girls, a musical survival guide, which was our cabaret show. Max had just come out of a long relationship, as had I. I had been broken up with, that I mentioned, and he was the break-upper. He was the heartbreaker. So we had this idea that like we both sort of navigated our way through the aftermaths very differently and yet very much the same. And that was, I think, a lot of learning for us as young men and for our audiences at the time. But we basically started the show at the breakups, and we wrote a subsequent album of original music.
It was very good.
Under our other pseudonym, The Beautiful Strangers.
And one of the songs was in That's Life, wasn't it? That you guys wrote. Yeah.
You did. You sang one of our original songs. You sang Goodbye, the last track on the album. But it's that one there navigates, the aftermath of the relationship, and how do you find yourself again? And it's all the questions you're asking now in 2021. How do we find love? Who is it? What does it feel like? What does it look like? And we basically shared all of our stories of being single. So I was single for about, maybe a few years. And across that few years, you would think I wasn't single, but I was. But I was definitely single. And in that time, it was, again, like, I don't know, like that was just how I threw myself into it, was work and partying, Carla, like I said. In that time, we had some wonderful experiences where connected with some beautiful, beautiful people, had relationships, be big and small in both volume, quality, depth, and or time. Yes. Some incredibly turbulent and really not good, not good in the sense of not healthy for anybody. Yeah. And yet you can't be part of it. And that's, again, I think part of the learning that people go through, when it is like, well, what am I learning from, not just from this situation, but is this the person I want to be? Like, I've encountered some things and said some things, and, where even I've been like, wow, I've actually had to be I'm so challenged by this person. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. And it's the things like the experiences of, having a crazy fling with someone in a, I don't know, pick a party, with that excitement, or meeting someone in a club, and then, or just going out for dinner and picking up the bartender on the way out or something like that. Like it became, I guess a bit like yourself, it got to that point where it's like, I know I'm happy with myself, and I'm just looking for anyone to go, well, I'm ready to be taken here. I'm ready for someone to come and be a partner and share some time with me. But I became very, very selective through all of these experiences of like, well, this is actually not what I like. I don't like this type of behavior. I don't like this type of personality. And it was funny because everything that I had experienced in that time, Carla, was everything that I actually knew. Again, this comes back to what we were talking about earlier. I knew deep down that I didn't like those things, but it's that thing where, people break up out of relationships and immediately go to the opposite of what they've had, or, it's that whole...
Or they repeat the same thing.
Or they find a carbon copy. They find the exact same person in a different body. It's like a body snatcher situation. And then it comes back to that question you asked earlier where you're like, well, the same thing keeps happening, but I don't know why. You're doing, you know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. And I think that was actually the best thing I could have done, because then after a couple of years of, again, serious and not serious relationships with various women, you learn so much. And the last relationship, I suppose, it was sort of the longest across that time. It was a matter of like maybe 12 to 14 weeks, I think, in total. But it had gone to that point where I was like, I'm single, and I'm if I never meet that person, like maybe I'm not meant to. After a few years of being single, I think like yourself, after a couple of years, it becomes theoretical. And I'm like, I don't want to get into a relationship either, because I don't want to have to pull somebody else up. I don't want to have to mold somebody, exactly like you were saying. And so when I was like, I'm happy, I'll be single forever. That's it. I'm done, wrapped. Met someone. It was really great. And like we clicked immediately. Wonderful, like first date, gorgeous first date. One of those sort of spontaneous, like, let's just go grab a pizza and wine. Like, yeah, great, let's do that. And then it turns into sort of, oh wow, it's 11 o'clock. We're still sitting here, still drinking wine. Like, it's great. But it just never sort of got past a point of, I think, intimacy, because there was something missing. I don't know what it was. Like she ticked every single box. And I guess this comes back to like the catches that we collect in your show, where it's like the catch was time. It didn't work out. The catch was the family didn't like me. The catch was, or like in our show, we had survival tips. So it was like, survival tip number 1, be honest and upfront, even when it hurts. That was survival tip number 1. And that comes back to that self-awareness as well as the other person's awareness, to be like, if this is nothing, let's say it's nothing. If it's just a one night stand, let's just call it that. If it's forever, let's both agree that it's forever if we think it is. But if not, let's not say it. And I think that was such a funny thing, because through all of that, like I said with this girl, there was just something I could not put my finger on.
Yes. And that's important. But I was willing to go along with it, because I
don't know, like at that time as well, like getting up to sort of later to mid-20s, at that time you're like, oh my God, my life's ending. What am I going to do? I'm nearly 30. You think that you've got, you've lived your whole life because you've had such a big romanticized high school level of experience earlier. Do you know what I mean? This is where life is just such a beautiful thing. But then I met my wife, and that's how I know. Do you know what I mean? Because I was willing to go along with this relationship to settle, not to settle. I would have been happy. I wouldn't have been happy.
No,
I know that.
No.
I can't even say it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't even say that honestly without my body physically shaking it out. No, I wouldn't have. No. I wouldn't have been happy.
Before we go into Joya, Vincenzo, because that is a beautiful story and I love it, and I've made you guys tell it so many times. It's really interesting and beautiful and fantastic, and I love the fact that you have pinpointed the fact that something was just not right, because what the trend I'm getting at the moment when I go on a date with somebody, and it's usually through a setup or whatever, and I can feel that it's not right, I'm not going to pursue it, and that's fine, because That's fine. But the responses I'm getting back from a lot of my friends are, you're too picky, your standards are too high, you're just trying to find something so you can stay single.
Yeah.
No, sorry, that's not.
That's rough. All right.
Yeah.
No, I think that there is, I disagree in the sense of, I hear what they're saying. I don't think it's fair to say to someone, you're being too picky.
Because I don't know my life experience. I was not picky enough before, though, Vince. That was my fucking problem. I was not picky enough before.
Why should you have you got to be picky. People are picky, right? About the fucking shoes they're going to wear on their feet for 3 weeks or for 3 years or whatever, right? People are picky about the jocks they might wear for one day or one special night. Why wouldn't you be picky about the partner you're going to live with or love for the rest of your life?
Thank you.
People are picky about their fucking coffees at Starbucks in the morning. Of course you should be picky about the partner you're going to spend your life with. I'm not saying pick every detail, pick them apart. You won't have to pick that person apart. You should not have to pick that person apart.
No, that's the point.
But I just think that's like, as your friend, I should tell your other friends, boo-hoo, like boo-hoo, poo-poo that, telling you you're too picky. Fuck that, Carla. I think that like, and just, look, if you're doing it off of like the first date, if maybe you're meeting a guy for 5 minutes and you're like, nah, you're out. See you.
I always give them at least a couple of hours, even if they're horrendous.
Or even then, like I feel like that's like a long job interview. Maybe for example, I didn't make this assumption or this call that something wasn't right on the first date. Right. That was after we've been dating for 3 or 4 weeks. We've had dinner a few times. We've caught up, done the movies thing. We're spending a bit of time, and it's lovely. There's just something, I don't know what it is. I still don't know.
But see, I can pinpoint the red flags.
But it depends what it is as well. Like if you're saying this person is not a good communicator and that's going to drive you crazy, that's not being picky. That's clear. That's a deal breaker.
Yeah, but apparently that's me being picky.
Nah, I think it's different. Like I think different, again, like who am I to say that you're not picky? Who is someone else to say you are picky? I think if everyone can just let everyone sing their own little song and accept that there is if it doesn't impact you, what does it matter? Let her be picky.
Yeah. Now, let's paint a beautiful picture and lead into this part of your journey, because it is a glorious part. And myself and Jewel, who's a photographer, we spoke about it on
she's our official photographer. You might say. And she mentioned it on her episode with you too. And she's an absolute joy, that woman. Like, if you haven't already, go follow her in every way. Get her to photograph you if you can. Yeah. But she and Joel and I met when I was in my single phase. And I was on the road. I was a sales rep at the time. And I pulled into a bakery and I was all like, passed in a chocolate donut. And this redhead girl turned around and it was Joel. And literally I was completely, this is how we met. And she turned around and was like, hi, can I help you? And I was literally like just taken by Joel at that moment, to the point where I was like, just the pasty and the donut, thanks. And I walked out and I was like, nah, I've got to go back in. I went back in. I was like, sorry, can I get your number? I actually asked Joel out and she was like, oh, no. It was actually...
energy is so beautiful. Like,
it's wonderful. Yeah. But it was so funny. And then so subsequently we've just remained like great friends across the years. Yeah. Nothing ever happened. Nothing ever eventuated. And it all worked out as it should have happened, in the sense that, so I was in my single years, singledom. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was living with my, 2 of my best mates from high school at number 10. It's a different story. And one of my housemates is in a band, another musician who you know as well. You know exactly who. And so he was performing this night. And when my last relationship ended, the high school one, the big one, a couple of friends, as well as my ex at the time, they moved over to London for like one of those gap years, a UK year, right? So they left. I was supposed to go on that trip too, but when we split up, it's obviously not the right thing to do. Yeah. So I stayed here, they left. And in that, subsequently, it felt like those friendships also were put on pause, I suppose. Like, you know, they were her people at the time, and that's just how it works out sometimes dynamically.
Yeah.
And so, you know, two of my best friends take off to the UK. They're gone. My housemate is playing in a gig in the city, and I'm working that night teaching like an intro to camera course or something in the city, probably in Actors Inc. or something that night. And and my housemate rings me and goes, "Mate, you've got to come to Dredsy's gig tonight. You've got to come to the gig tonight." And I was like, "Nah, look, man, I've had a long day. I'm really not in the mood.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually just not. Like I was just having a pretty ordinary week, I reckon." And I remember feeling really glum that night, like leaving work, feeling shitted off. He's like, no, mate, you've got to come to the gig. Such and such is back from the UK, and they would really love to see you as well. Like they really want to catch up with you as well. And I was like, okay, like, I don't know, man. Like I'm not in the mood. I'm probably not in the right headspace even to like, I don't know what to expect. And so we left it at that. And I'm driving through the city, and I remember this sort of split-second decision coming up Curry Street and being like, nah, stuff it. And I dropped a U-turn, and I went to the pub, and it was like, it was November. So we walked into the pub, and the first person I see is my friend who's returned from the UK, and immediately they jump up and they give me like, Vin, big hug, and I'm so thrilled to see them. And it's literally like no time has passed at all. Nothing has changed. Like, yeah, just pure love and light, right? So she gives me this big hug, and she's like, "Oh my God, it's so good to see you." I'm like, "It's so great to see you." And then she steps aside and literally goes, "Oh my God, Ben, this is Joya." Now, that's where literally time just stood still. And I don't know if the world stopped moving or started. I don't really know what happened, but that was our introduction. And literally it was like, "Hi, nice to meet you." And so whilst our friends were in the UK, Joya was in the UK at the time. I hope she doesn't mind me telling this story. She was in the UK as well at the same time. So my friend who I had lost contact with, who went over to the UK, went over there, met Joya there, knew of each other through another mutual friend here, but they connected over there and spent time together in the UK and formed a really beautiful friendship. And so that night that I went to the pub to see my housemate play and my old friend return from the UK was the night that completely changed my life. And the friend that I lost from one relationship actually introduced me to my forever right there. So it was the most sort of profound moment. And I spent the rest of the night basically just oogling her and trying not to get caught looking at her from across the room, and vice versa. I stick to that. She was smart. But she, I remember like distinctly, I said, so like everyone like met Joya, "Hi, nice to meet you. Say hello to the boys," you know. And then I was like, "Oh guys, I'll go grab a round of drinks. Anybody want a drink?" Everyone's like, no. I was like, "Anyone drink? You want a drink?" "Joya, can I buy you a drink?" And I asked her directly, and she was like, "Oh no, thank you." And that was it. And that was it. And then so that was the beginning of November, and the night we met. And I just
pause you right there. Because the listeners can't see you, but my face hurts from smiling so much. That story, every time you tell it, not only is the actual events joyful, it is the glittery, beautiful joy, vibe, energy that Vince gives off when he tells this story. That is just so infectious and just so glorious. Like you should see his eyeballs and his smile. It's just...
You're so lovely. You're so lovely. It's easy to tell good stories. Easy to tell good stories and bad stories.
Yeah, but you can feel like I can feel the heart in that story. Like I can...
thank you. Yeah, it's a great story. I love telling it. Like I said, I'm a hopeless romantic. I love telling this story.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
We're sick of hearing it from me, I'm sure.
I doubt it.
Story. But no, so that was that. And then that was the beginning of November. And then 2 weeks later, Max and I had our album launch from the Beautiful Strangers album that we mentioned earlier. And so that was the end of November. And who should walk in and say hello but Joya, who she was like, "Hi," and I was like, "Oh my God, hi Joya." And she always said, like, she's like, the fact that I said her name that night, like she couldn't believe it, and it was just the sweetest thing. I couldn't believe that she was there. And then that was on the Friday night. And on Monday, the following Monday, I got a Facebook message with a hi and a smiley face. And that was it. And then I left for Asia at the end of that week for like a month. And so we just like were talking the whole time I was away in Asia performing. And then I went to Thailand for a couple of weeks. The whole time I was like, my flatmates and my travel mates were like, oh, we're going to go to this rave tonight. We're going to go to this jungle thing tonight. We've got another nightclub tonight. And it was like, it was all great fun time. But like specifically, I remember like the last couple of weeks just being like, I'm staying home tonight. And they had McDonald's delivery in Thailand and like in Asia before it was here, before it was like Uber Eats and stuff. And so like that was such a novelty. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to stay in. I would stay in almost every night ordering fucking McDonald's and be on Messenger with Joya, like chatting. And then literally the day I got back from Asia, the very next day we had our first date on January 10, and we've not been separated since, now married 5 years and 2 beautiful boys later. And it all is just the best. But again, like it comes back to so many things that we've discussed today. Like we both, I think, had been through like, you know, relationships, significant relationships, little relationships. We both, you know, she lived in Europe for some time by herself. She's, you know, we've gone off and traveled, and we sort of had not to say that people need to do these things. Some people do. Some people need to do it without knowing it. I did it without knowing it. Do you know what I mean? Like I didn't know, but I was actually lucky enough to get my travel fix and my worldly experience through my professional career at the time as a performer. So I guess like, you know, some people do it after uni, some people do it straight after school. I got to do it during school. And so I think that's where, you know, different life paths and different people will take you and whatnot. So when we both met, I think it was just, you know, like I said, a colliding of worlds and magic. And we just like, we talk about everything, as you know, like I say, as you know, you, Carla, know, your listeners don't know because it's our business, but we talk about everything. Like it's communication. Like we communicate about everything.
And the beautiful thing is not only is your communication excellent, you both, because obviously I've been around you guys a fair bit.
You're actually here next week as well, I believe.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I watch the ways in which you both listen to each other, and there's a real beautiful sweetness and openness to the way that you guys listen to each other and the body language that the two of you have together. So yes, communication is 100% very important, but listening is also just as important.
Yeah. And it's that whole, like, if you put them first, you know how everyone's like, put your partner first, like put your partner first, their happiness, and not their happiness. Well, yeah, it is their happiness, but put them first. And then they're like, oh, but what about yourself? And you go, yeah, but if she's putting you first or they're putting you first and you're putting them first, you're always going to be first in one way or another. And I think that ideology is what is correct. Like I just know that like whatever decision she makes for us or as a family or for her, she's taken into consideration my thoughts, my feedback. If she hasn't, like we'll discuss it and vice versa. Like I'll bring everything to her and be like, what do you think of this? Well, is this? And you're like, you know, just whether it be world politics or, you know, wallpapering the house, like to everything. Like we'll talk about every little detail, but it's that idea, like I'll always make a decision for us before I make it, so that, you know what I mean? Like there's no, I don't know, if I think that she's going to disagree, I won't do it because it doesn't align.
Yeah.
You know, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. So I often say to friends, like I'm emceeing so many weddings at the moment that you see like all these different types of love, and it's incredible how vastly different they can be. I'm not just saying the scale of a wedding, but like the people, you get a sense of the people at a wedding. It's a very loved up, a very high emotional day. But it's like the idea of 50-50 in a relationship no longer sits with me. It's like when we talk about our relationship between us one-to-one, we say it's 100-100. Like we're putting in 100% each. We're not putting in 50% each to fill up 100. I'm going to give you 100% of me and vice versa. And that's something that we've, I don't know, like we've always had a very, I don't know, I feel like we've never had like a stunted growth in our relationship. It's always just been forward. And so I think with that, that's what's made it so successful. And we both are on the same page.
Yes.
At every point we listen to each other. Like you said, it's really about that. It's respect. I respect her beyond anything and anyone. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's an intuitive, you can see that the way that you two are is very intuitive in like towards each other. You're very in tune with
just in sync
each other. Yeah.
And I think that comes to like that revolves around so many things of like our personalities, our upbringings, our experiences, what we bring to our life views.
But it's also a choice, Vincenzo. It's also
100%. No, absolutely, it's a choice. Yeah. It's absolutely a choice, and yet it doesn't feel like a choice at all. That's how we know it's right.
Mm-hmm. Can you say that again, please? Say it again.
It is a choice, and yet it's not a choice at all, and that's how you know it's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think that like there's no choice. Like that way, my house wins every time. My family and my home. Do you know what I mean? Like my heart and my relationship. That is the example that was set that you asked about. I guess the example that was set was like it's your family yes. And the people that are around you. And I think that's where when you look at my whole journey of love, like we looked at today, from first crushes, which were so romanticized on the screen of television and film, to then what I was experiencing at home, which was a very European style household. Yeah. You know what I mean? Which has so many different hierarchical nuances to it.
Yeah.
And politics sometimes, but you go, well, all the way through to like being single and really pushing some boundaries of myself emotionally. Like some of the situations I found myself in are just absurd. You know, Max and I talked about the vampires and like, yeah, like what? Like never had a person, like you ever had someone square punch you in the face, right like when you least expect it, just as like things are getting really like lovely, and just cop a full punch in the face. Like these are some crazy situations. We have to have a different podcast for that, Carla. But I guess like that is the journey of where I'm at now and how we got to here, because I've experienced all of those things that now it's so easy to go, well, those relationships shaped me to this. They prepared me for her and vice versa. And that's the best thing, because and that's why I keep saying to you even more so, like when that person comes, you're not going to have to struggle. You're not going to have to. And that sounds so, I'm certain you're going to have listeners that are like, that's easy for you to say because you're in a relationship. You don't know, because everyone in a relationship says that. They're like, just wait for the right person. Or they're saying, just settle. It's either just wait or just settle.
Yes.
So what is that? Can't you just be?
What I do love is Chris Rock, his Netflix special. Have you seen it?
Love Chris Rock. Yes, I have. And you love him. You quote him so often, it's ridiculous.
I fucking love him. I do.
You get Chris Rock on the podcast.
I love his example of relationships and love, because he got it wrong. He's divorced, so he can see through his past behavior. And I love his point that he makes, that you're not in competition with each other. You are working together towards the same goal. 100%. And those roles will ebb and flow as your evolution as a couple is. And that's when he talks about the tambourine, and you better fucking play that tambourine.
Yeah, play it, smash it. Absolutely. I think that's so important. And it's like, people talk about, like, people grow in relationships and grow out of relationships. And of course things happen and people end up in divorce and people end up in all sorts of fucked up situations or not fucked up situations. Normal is only what we've experienced, right? That's the limit
Correct.
of any one person's experience. So we can't say what is normal at this point, I think. It's normal for me is normal for you. What's normal for the spider is chaos for the fly. Everybody knows this.
In closing, Vincenzo, can you leave the lovely people that are listening with some parting words of wisdom when it comes to love and relationships?
That's tough. Parting words. Love exists in many, many forms. Not all forms are for you. Seek love because it exists, but find the right love for you. But I think that's what it looks like. I think there's so many different loves in so many different forms. And, you know, people look at other people's relationships sometimes and go, I just don't get it. I don't get it. The fact is, you don't have to get it.
And it's none of your business.
It's none of your business, 100%. But, you know, support the people around you with your love that you love. Give them your love. Support your friends. Support your family when they're in relationships, because relationships are tricky. All of them are. Friendships, platonic, romantic, whatever the fuck. But yeah, that's my advice, is find the right love for you.
Yes.
Today has been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and having me. I feel so privileged to be on this wonderful, wonderful juggernaut of yours.
Very cute. Thank you.
So good. I look forward to having you on my show very soon and catching up with you in person.
Before I love and leave you, can you tell everybody where they can find you and give us a little, you know, a little sneak peek of what to expect with your Poddy Pod?
Right. Well, thank you for the plug. You can find more information at vincefusco.com. And that's just a bit more information about my mentoring, professional coaching, and some other services there, as well as the podcast, which will be launching very soon, The Alchemy of Success with Vince Fusco. I'm your host, Vince Fusco. And it's really a melting pot of all of the things that we're looking at on success. Okay. So, like, what is your success? Is it love success? Is it your personal growth success? Is it professional? Is it, you know, you're living with chronic pain? Is it living through divorce? Is it parenting? Success is so varied and on so many different scales for so many different people, and it looks very different. So I've got a lot of great guests that we've already started recording, entrepreneurs, medical specialists in the field of like chronic pain that have been discussing some incredible breakthroughs for people living with that, mental health specialists. We've got some psychiatrists joining us, some artists such as yourself coming on board, as well as, you know, other local entrepreneurs as well, talking about their journey. So it is conversations to engage. It's conversations to hopefully shake some fruit out of some trees for some people. And, you know, let's get some ideas going. It's about cultivating alchemy, creating something from nothing as if by magic, which, you know, is my favorite word and my favorite style of creation. And, you know, and I guess like using my experiences, my skills, hopefully I can help some people really achieve their goals and succeed at whatever it is they want to succeed at, because I think that's just the most amazing position to have, is to be able to offer somebody else that ability. Like, I love that. So that's such a gift to the world, Vincenzo. And look, you've definitely done that, obviously, with all the stuff that I do that you've been involved with. I cannot express enough how magic this man is in helping you find not only who you are, but exceeding expectations with what your dreams and goals are in life, career and whatnot. So definitely listen to that podcast because it'll be fucking excellent. Carla. That's so lovely. That's like literally, it's so lovely. I can't thank you enough. Thank you. That's sweet.
Ciao.
Ciao.
The Catchalorette, with friends near and far, from heartache to catfish and sex toys. The Catchalorette and friends. See you next time, if you dare.
Bank of the West is offering the 1% for the Planet checking account. It gives back 1% of the account's net revenue to the planet at no cost to you. There's no monthly service charge with any deposit per statement, and there's no minimum balance required. The 1% for the Planet checking account, only from Bank of the West. Learn more at bankofthewest.com/1%. Additional conditions apply. Member FDIC.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.